morning, everybody. Nikki Burnett here. Today's Taste Life Nutrition Radio and podcast streaming live on KUHSdenver.com. Can't hear my favorite song. Got to turn it up. Today's going to be amazing. Today we were going to take a break, and we had a conversation over the weekend. So let's back it up a little bit. What happened was we went to a Christmas party. And so we've had on, in the past, we've had on Dr. Ben Bush, who is an amazing regenerative medicine doctor close to us here in Colorado, not far from me. And he's building this really cool practice. And so what he's done is he's brought on and has expanded into Dillon because of Tara Taylor here, who is with me. And so at this party, we were chitty-chatting it up. I had heard her name, knew that Dr. Ben was expanding, and then I heard Tara's story. And I was like, well, I guess I'm not taking a break next week because we need to have this show. Which is good. It's all good. This is the stuff that as hard as it is to hear, and some people might be pissed off, some people might be scared, some people might be frustrated, you might be all of it. I'm probably a little bit of all of it. So, and Tara, I'm sure, is a little bit of all of it.
For sure.
Yeah. But this is the stuff that we want to bring to light on this show, and we want people to know what the truth is. We want to, we want people to be aware, right? That's the key, is education and knowledge and awareness around what is out there and what we can do to help ourselves and what we need to be careful of, I think. So I'm going to stop, sort of just going on and on so we can talk about this a little bit. But first and foremost, we always start the show with gratitude, because gratitude can change the world. Fully believe that. Tara, what are you grateful for?
I'm grateful to be alive after what happened to me, for sure. I am grateful for my wonderful family and all the support they gave me through all of this, and grateful to have this amazing new career, given everything that's going on.
That is, we talk about this a lot because it's really amazing what life gives us and what comes out of what life gives us. So I think that's beautiful. I am grateful that you're here. I'm grateful that you're stepping up and you're telling your story. And there, I hope, will be a lot of people who tell their stories. There are probably a lot of people trying to tell their stories, and I know that it's a difficult thing, and we'll get into that as well. So I'm grateful for this time of year. This is my favorite time of year is spring and summertime, but my favorite holiday is certainly Christmas. I'm so grateful for the life that I've been given, that Christ came to save us, and this is such a beautiful celebratory time of year. And it's going to be 70 degrees today.
Not where I live.
Not where you live, but you're down the hill today.
Yeah, oh, for sure. I'm going to be down here enjoying it.
Anyway, we're gonna get to go and see family and hang out and take a little bit of a break and all of that stuff. So and prepare for a big year next year. So all good stuff to come. So let's do this. Let's just go ahead and jump in. You start wherever you want to start when it comes to telling your story. And yeah, that's really it, because this is all about your story, which is a crazy flipping story.
So yeah, I mean, I would say that I've been in the medical field for over 20 years, and I, never had any fears or concerns about vaccines. I never questioned, anything that I was doing or anything that was being done around me, and I received the COVID vaccine and woke up 12 hours later with a form of paralysis from the neck down, and I took weeks for me to move correctly again. They called it transverse myelitis of my spine, which they said happened once in Europe with the AstraZeneca trials, and to find out that it happened to someone in my town as well as me. So I feel like that's a little bit closer than just one
Yeah.
person.
Yeah, and how many times did you just not hear about, or did they not tell you about, or did they hide? I don't know.
I think a lot of people don't even know they're injured.
Yeah.
You know, the more that I talk to people.
Mm-hmm. So, and just to back it up real quick, the unfortunate piece to all, well, it's all unfortunate. You basically didn't have a choice.
No, absolutely not. I mean, as a healthcare provider, it was you put this chemical into your body or you will no longer have a career. You know, I'm not really sure how that was ever allowed, but I would immediately lose my job. And my boss at the time was incredibly persistent about it, and you know, I felt like I had received every vaccine my whole life prior, so why would this be any different? You know, why would this injure me? You know, I had no idea.
Yeah, it is interesting as a healthcare provider. I had to do this when I was doing surgical devices, right? You know, all of the vaccines, and I never had any reactions either. But I get you. I mean, for one, there was no data, right? I mean, they pushed this thing with no data, and then they're like, oh, well, you are at almost no risk. You still have to get the vaccine.
Right. There's no data. There's nothing to support it. We're actually calling it an emergency use substance that's experimental, and you're gonna put your social security number and your name on a piece of paper and sign it and drive up and have them put this chemical into your body, and you essentially just signed away as well. You know, that I'm making this choice, so whatever happens. So I'm just still beside myself years later, I think.
So you were probably one of the first, probably 2020?
Oh, absolutely.
Or 2021? Vaccinated.
2021.
Okay. Unreal. It's all just so bizarre to me still. And so what was next? What happened next?
So I would say, you know, the difference between central nervous system and peripheral. Central is your walking, talking, and your peripheral is don't touch that stove, it's hot. It's your sensory. So it first attacked my central nervous system, where it affected my walking, talking, all of that. And I ended up with meningitis twice, and so that is swelling in the brain. So it swelled my brain to twice the maximum pressure that it should be. I had like 5 lumbar punctures. Those were super fun. And yeah, I had swelling in my optic nerves that lasted 2 years and affected my vision permanently. And so when it was done doing all that, and I ended up home and being happy to be alive.
So and still not working. Were you working?
Well,
or could you
I mean, I went back to work after this. Like, I didn't have a choice. Like, we have a mortgage, and you know, the same thing as everyone else. You can't just be sick, you know. So my husband was like massaging my feet one day, and I said, one of my feet feels different than the other. This doesn't make sense to me. And that's where it started, where I started up the left side of my body. I received the vaccine on the left side of my body, and the left side of my body began to hurt, and like spiders crawling on it type of thing, like the nerves were dying. So then I ended up with a ton of pain, ended up with neurology, and neurology did biopsies of my skin and found that all the nerves on the surface of my skin, more so on the left side than the right, had actually killed themselves. They auto-destructed. So I have no peripheral nervous system anymore. I'm on still a bunch of medications for killing the nerve pain, but technically underneath this, what they've done to me is not survivable, as far as if these medicines were not available to me tomorrow in an uncertain world that we live in. You know, I would not be able to go on.
Yeah.
So
just to dig in a little bit here, first off, going back to the meningitis, this is, I think probably a lot of people know this, maybe most people know this, I don't know, but this is, I mean, meningitis in and of itself is a killer.
Yeah.
My mother-in-law passed of meningitis. It was bacterial meningitis. Yeah, it stunk. We're like, how the hell did that happen? But it's terrible.
Well, and what's most concerning about it is there's a couple of types, and I had what's called aseptic meningitis. So twice, not bacterial, not viral, not parasitic. Aseptic is without infection. So they essentially said to me, your brain swelled up twice without any reason.
Just because.
Just because.
Just because.
Because it's Monday.
Like every other disease. It's just because. It just happens. It's not any other reason. It's just because.
I mean, they should just call it, vaccine-related meningitis.
Oh, you can't do that.
Let's just do it.
You can't do that.
I mean, I fought hard for them to even call this a vaccine injury.
Mm-hmm.
I sat there and I said, you will put this in my chart,
Mm-hmm.
because for over a year they neglected to put that in. And it's actually a diagnosis now, post-COVID condition and
Mm-hmm.
vaccine injury.
Mm-hmm.
So I made them put it in my chart. I wanted it to exist.
And so why the hell would they not put that, would you be fought in putting that in your chart?
Well, I think that they're like, we don't want to associate the vaccine with this, like, we can't prove it. And it's like, I woke up 12 hours later.
Mm-hmm.
I had never been to anything but the primary care doctor for, 37 years at that point,
Mm-hmm.
37 years of an annual physical. And then 12 hours later, I wake up like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I looked at this doctor and I was like, you will put this in my chart. Okay, you can't prove that 2 months later some whatever
Mm-hmm.
occurred due to it, and,
Mm-hmm.
by design, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But, 12 hours later, you will put this in my chart. So, but yeah, to even have to tell them that. I had one ER visit when this pain first started happening, and they, as soon as they heard that I was vaccine injured, no one came. The regular doctor didn't come, the neurologist, just his fellows and their residents came, and then they discharged me without any imaging. It was like, we don't want any part of this. We don't want to touch you. Like, we don't want to say we even scanned you. And sent me home and said, you need to see a neurologist outpatient, but nothing that's happening to you needs to be addressed here.
The thing too that I keep thinking about is, and again, going back to, let's just try to think of the good that comes out of the shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's basically what it is. But you being a medical professional, this is your world. You know the ins and the outs. You know what's supposed to happen. You know what they're supposed to do. You know what's supposed to be documented. You know that there's supposed to be imaging involved.
100%.
You know the processes that go into all of this because you're knee deep, you're head deep in it as your profession. So you know what's supposed to happen that's not happening and what's going on.
Oh, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, what my condition is called non-length dependent small fiber neuropathy. So neuropathy like in a diabetic's feet.
Mm-hmm.
Length dependent is hands and feet or arms and legs. And non-length dependent means it can travel anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So, I walked into this neurologist's office and, after the peripheral stuff started happening, and I was like, I have non-length dependent small fiber and I need skin biopsies, and in the end they were like, oh, okay, you're right, so, but I remember sitting in my house and going, is this vaccine related too?
Mm-hmm.
Because I was like, okay, everything's over. I'm walking, I'm talking, I can hold things in my hands. I think I'm through this. And just when I think I'm through it, it did
something
more.
else manifests.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, how could it not? I mean, you go through such a traumatic injury. I mean, we see this in medicine. I see this in my world all the time, where you have the start of a symptom, right? Mm-hmm. And then it just spirals, right? And so we can't say that everything's not connected, right? What do they say? Your ear ball is connected to your toe ball, whatever. Yeah. Everything's connected. Everything internally is connected. And when things go haywire, you can't expect that one thing's going to go haywire and that's it.
Absolutely. I think it all went haywire. And,
Yeah,
you
I
know,
would say so.
sitting here with you, even underneath this, you know, I have gone through the therapies I have to minimize the amount of meds I'm on, but how terrifying is it for me to think if these meds weren't available, I wouldn't be able to live. You know, I would need to be put down. I mean, I don't know how else to say it, you know, but, and, you know, there's diabetics out there that can't live without insulin, people who have high blood pressure or seizures, who if their meds went away, you know, I know that I'm not alone in this respect, but the severity of what's underneath this is, it's kind of like within 12 to 24 hours, if I miss this medication, which, you know, I get busy and I miss it, and, you know, I end up with pain, but within 24 hours, the pain feels like standing too close to a fire, like when you put your hands up to the fire and then you're like, okay, that's too much. It feels like that, but that you're not able to move away. So I essentially like burst into flames. I mean, it is not like, oh, I'm in pain, this really stinks. Like it is, it's not tolerable. You know.
That's awful. It's just horrendous. And
people look at me like, oh, look, she looks fine, and I just, no one knows what's going on underneath this.
You know what's you know, you just brought something to my attention, because I had a call with a podcast called Invisible Conditions. And so I'm going to be on his, he's going to be on mine, but you need to be on his.
Perfect.
You need to be on that one.
There's not enough people that can know about this.
Yeah, it's true.
Everyone's walking around thinking this is just fine, and they're like on their 4th boosters, and, you know, we had people in our support groups, which certainly we can talk about, but who were not injured until their 2nd booster, and that is where their body was like, okay, this is, I've reached my maximum.
It's your toxic bucket overload.
But just because you tolerated the first 2 doesn't mean that, you know, you can't get non-length dependent small fiber on booster number 2.
I have a patient in the clinic, one of the clinics that I work with, and she's had 7 vaccines and has had COVID 7 times.
Oh, I had COVID after all of this, like 3 times.
Yeah, still getting it. Yeah. So I want to go back to what you're experiencing and what's going on internally, because you have, I mean, so we know typically that when there's nerve damage, nerves have the ability to heal. At this point, though, is it the case that you don't have the ability to heal those nerve fibers?
So,
or do you know?
No, you know, I truly believe, I feel like, you know, God's done so much work to improve me to even where I am. When this first happened to me, I was like, I will never walk again. I will never do any, you know, I never saw myself snowboarding again. And so if I'm on the snowboarding hill, you know, how can I ever say it's impossible to heal completely, because I thought it was impossible to be sitting where I am right now. So I try to be positive in that respect, but I have received quite a few functional medicine treatments that allowed me to sit here today, you know, and it certainly, I used to snowboard, and if I fell, my body would like ring like a bell, and I would hurt for 3 or 4 days. And now I can fall and be a normal person, you know, for the most part, you know, just a little bit more pain probably, but nothing like that, nothing like when I first tried. And there are peripheral nerves inside your body on all of your organs as well. So my internal organs are also damaged to where when I do let it go beyond where it should, pain-wise, it will hurt for my heart to beat. It will hurt to hurt to breathe in and out. So, I mean, what's happened to me is like way more severe than I could really explain, or what people think that this vaccine could ever do, you know, to someone. So, I received quite a few treatments that have improved me. So, I think it's just a matter of continuing to do those type of things.
Yeah, fascinating. So, let's talk about, I mean, I guess maybe how you because you ended up meeting Dr. Ben.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. Were you searching for what to do? Because you didn't practice functional medicine
No.
before.
I didn't even consider it. I definitely never thought I
did. Did you believe in it?
So I just didn't know what it involved. I didn't know what they were capable of, until sitting in ACAM's conference, the American College of the Advancement in Medicine, and going, oh my God, like, revelation, this is it. This is the stuff right here that actually heals people, not just, there's no patient that sits in front of me and is like, oh yeah, a Western medicine or traditional medicine, that stuff's great. Most people sit in front of me and are like, I know that these drugs, that money means more than human health. Like, the moment that human health became a for-profit industry, we were, we didn't have a good future in that respect. But it went beyond, in order to keep my nerves at bay, they implanted a port in my chest like they do for chemotherapy patients. At that time, my immune system was so overactive, because they use the word upregulated as far as that goes. And so my immune system was so upregulated in attacking my nerves that if I didn't receive an infusion of IVIG every 14 days, even by day 12, 13, I was in so much pain just waiting to be able to do these infusions. Had to put the needle through my chest, and my poor husband helping me through all of this, and a refrigerator in my house full of glass bottles of hundreds of thousands of dollars of, unfortunately, of medications.
IVIG is out of control expensive.
I think it was $8,500 a bottle, and I was using 4 bottles every 2 weeks. So and I was $1 million baby.
Oh, jeez. Typically, IVIG, in most cases, as far as I know, is usually monthly. I've heard of 1 or 2 people that I know of who have used it twice monthly, but you're using it. You didn't have any choice but to use it twice. So IVIG is like immune boosting immunoglobulins, right? And it goes in IV, and it helps your immune system to function properly.
Yeah, so I was using that in order to help my body function properly. That wasn't even enough. I ended up on Cellcept, which is a heart and lung transplant medication, to help the body not reject a transplanted organ. So they were treating my body as if it was rejecting itself.
Which is super immunosuppressive.
Yes.
So you're doing IVIG to boost the immune system at the same time you're suppressing the immune system.
So the IVIG in my case was immunosuppressive. So it was acting in that respect.
Really? I don't think I knew that it would do that.
Yeah, well, it was, in whatever way it was doing it was calming the situation. So both of those together wasn't even enough, and consideration of rituximab and chemotherapy drugs. And so I technically infuse 36 hours a month in my own home, luckily not in an infusion center, because I had these skills. They allowed me to do it at home, but I was infusing upward of 36 hours a month for 20 months.
Unreal.
Yeah. This was, and Western medicine said to me, well, I said, what's next? And they said, well, your pain's controlled, with this every 2 weeks. This is your life now.
Your life.
This is, no B cells, no T cells. You're like an HIV patient with leukemia. You have no immune system, so God forbid something happens, and this is your life now, forever. Let me tell you where my mind was at when that was told to me,
Yeah, I would imagine.
Yeah.
So I want to jump back real quick, because I think it's so interesting. I when I decided to be a nutritionist, certainly not med school, but I decided, okay, I want to be a nutritionist, and I'd never heard of functional medicine, functional nutrition, any of that stuff. When I was introduced to it, kind of like you, I was like, holy smokes, this is the way God intended, right? You look at the root cause of a condition, and you address that root cause, and you start to allow the body to balance at least as much as possible, right? I still hear, though, even as of recently, lots of people say there's no science behind it.
You know, when I was down at the ACAM conference, they kept repeating this. They were
Mhm.
like, chelation, ozone therapy, all these things that many people have never heard of. And they would say the science is lacking because they won't put any science towards it because it won't make them money in the end. They can't patent it and, you know, all that kind of stuff. But it came down to, you know, they would say, but people get better, but people feel better. So, you know, it's the cases you don't hear of, you know, on Ben's website, you know, the ViveWell.health, people are sitting there doing testimonials. Okay, the science isn't there, but they feel better. And I don't know how to get the science there if they're not going to put any money towards it.
Right. Well, and that's the key. And the problem is today, you know, the word science has been, you know, hijacked. You know, there is agenda behind the word science as opposed to curiosity. And that's what we need is we have to have curiosity. We have to learn and understand and know that it changes and know that as we learn more, things change and heaven forbid we're wrong, right? I mean, that's just the way it goes. We are human and we're going to be wrong about some things, and that's the beauty of life and of science, the way science is intended. So it's super frustrating the way that this has gone with the everything is just agenda driven, right? And you know, I got to prove a point. It's got to be my point, not just to learn and to educate and to be informed, right? Go ahead. Were you gonna say something?
Oh no, I mean, starting where I did on this path of functional medicine, moving forward, I am literally amazed every single day. And to learn that all of the things we're doing, some of them are new, but a lot of them are old. A lot of these treatments, you know, exposing the blood to ozone, exposing the blood to UVA and UVC lights to kill bacteria, like, you know, peroxide and things like that. These are things from the 1930s, you know, and chelation, the medications that grab the metal and remove it from the system, you know, heavy metal detox, was from the 1950s. So these are just things that they said, well, Western medicine came along now, here's the prescription drugs that make all the money. Let's take what they did before antibiotics and we don't need that anymore.
Yeah, it's so interesting too because, you know, in the world of functional medicine, functional nutrition, you know, we talk about this all the time. It's, you know, you address the root cause. What is typically the root cause of dysfunction? It's going to be microbial, it's going to be toxins, environmental toxins, heavy metals, it can be worms, it can be parasites, it can be mycotoxins, right? So these are the things that tend to be your root causes of dysfunction. And then we have these things like the vaccines that can certainly be a root cause of dysfunction. So when we look at the way, and this is not anything against medicine because drugs have their place without a doubt. They are necessary for specific reasons. I think that they are way overused, but we've taken out all of these other therapies as far as medicine's concerned. I say that. We're moving in the much better direction where it's coming together, which is amazing. But we've taken out these therapies that are addressing the root cause and only saying, okay, well, we have this drug, the drug will get rid of it when the drug is just covering it up.
Symptom management is all that I did for 20 years. You know, the ICU was one thing. You know, people were literally rolled their car over, and there's your part where this patient's life needs to be saved. But then you have their chronic pain management afterwards, and they're like, here's your drugs, when they're not even, you know, approaching this from a cure thing standpoint. You know, I think learning in the functional medicine world now that serotonin comes from our gut. You know, how come not everyone out there knows this? So you've got people on a Prozac who have never had gut testing before, never had a one-day stool test and never met with a functional nutritionist. You know, why are you on this drug? Okay, because it makes it better, but what if there's actually a root cause? And if we address the gut and not just dietary, I mean, dealing with things like overgrowth and dysbiosis and, you know, having the right healthy bacteria in the gut, a lot of people were missing this, especially in the day and age where I read an article saying that in the last 70 years, there's been 10,000 chemicals added to our food supply. 10,000.
They were, a bunch of them were grandfathered in. And it's like, no, we don't have to test them, just grandfather them in, they're fine.
They're not doing this in Europe.
No.
You know, you can't have the regular cereals. You know, you have to have them dyed with beets and carrots and things like that, and they ban thousands of these chemicals elsewhere. And in the US, you know, they're attributing some of these dyes and things to ADD, to autism, you know, to learning disabilities, to behavioral problems in kids, and they're like, oh, well, it's cheap to make, costs more to do it the right way, so here's your cereal.
Yeah, it's disgusting. You know, there's something to this, and I don't know what it is, but it's super insidious, as far as I'm concerned, where we have these organizations who are intentionally putting these chemicals in our food and saying it's fine, and knowing that they're not fine. I mean, the data is out there at this point about the excitatory issues, the carcinogenicity, my words, of some of these preservatives and these toxins. I mean, I still see them in foods, and I'm floored that we're eating these foods with all this stuff in it. But we think that because we want to assume that not everybody wants to hurt us, right? But that's exactly what's happening, is we're eating these foods with this trash in it that is creating a toxic overload, is creating excitatory children who are then in trouble and who are then put on drugs for this, instead of just letting them be children and go outside and play, right? And, you know, run their energy off. I mean, we all have puppies who they gotta run. Kids are the same way. We gotta get that energy out. And so this is this huge cyclical issue that is pervasive in our world right now, in this country, that is creating massive issues. And it's only just now that we're starting to see people who have enough of a reach and enough of a platform to say, this is BS, something has to be done about this, and we're gonna do something about it. And I'm so grateful for where we are with having these people. You know, I say this multiple times, but it's RFK, it's Casey and Callie Means, it's, you know, people like Josh Axe and Mark Hyman, and all of these people who are out there beating the drum day in and day out about, we have to get rid of this trash in our food. But it comes down to us as individuals too. You know, we have to be aware, once we stop buying the trash is gonna go away. So it's up to us. We can't leave it up to the government or up to big food or big pharma or big whoever. We have to say no and put our foot down.
Well, and you know, and it's not even what the food we're putting in our body as well. I didn't think about this until, you know, chelation, that heavy metal removal, that we realized that was a huge part of my injury, whether it was aluminum from the vaccines, it just kind of pushed my system over the edge. But you know, I began to sit there with Dr. Norman Levin, who is a functional integrated rheumatologist, and up in Fairplay, actually, so super rural. And he said to me, you know, do you even think about that you're cooking on Teflon cookie sheets? So you just grew up your whole life doing this, and you were like, the cookies, they're on the sheet, they're in the oven, cookies are good, but you just cooked them on something where you put Teflon into that food and then that chemical into your body. And it just occurs to me, like, why they're coming out with, you know, there's safer products now that are coming out, but of course they're twice as expensive, so people can't afford them. And then, you know, if this has chemicals in it, why is it even on the shelf? Like, why is that allowed to be sold anymore? You know, it takes so long to ban something that, you know, tens of thousands of people are injured from it before that happens.
So we can take that, you know, in pretty much every direction, because yes, there's Teflon, which is a forever chemical. It doesn't go away, which is just crazy. So we can test for these forever chemicals, which is really cool. But we have that, and then we have the stuff that we put on our skin, the stuff that we clean our clothes with, the stuff that we clean our homes with. We have the stuff that we put in our yards to, kill weeds and kill bugs. It's also killing us and killing our microbiome and killing our immune system. So these metals are everywhere. They're everywhere, and they're really hard too. Metals are so interesting because there's no real great test for them. We can test, but metals come out in hair, in urine, in blood, in stool, in saliva, in sweat. And so we test for them, and I test for them, but you've got to have like 14 tests to get a really good view of all the heavy metals in our bodies, but we're full of them.
Well, and Western medicine will test a blood test for lead, and they're sitting there like, oh, well, there's high lead in the water in the school system, so if any kid comes in and they've got these symptoms, draw a lead level. Well, a lead level in the blood is 6 to 8 hours of exposure. So unless you're being like blasted with lead, you live next to the airport, like those, we've actually seen a couple of things like that now on TV. But the real test is, so you're just saying, no, they're not being exposed to high levels right now in the last 8 hours. But the real tests that we've been doing are 6-hour urine tests after a provocative chelation, where we kind of stir things up. We call it like shaking the snow globe. And we do a 6-hour urine collection, and we see the true, what we call body burden. So because these toxic metals live in our bones and they live in our soft tissues, so they're not in our bloodstream until we shake things up, and then they mostly come out through the urine. So we truly see the difference between the two.
Yeah, it's a big difference when you provoke, because you really do start to you mobilize the toxins from the tissues, and it comes out. And so it's really so important to do that. I want to get back to, I can sit and talk about this stuff forever. I want to get back to what all you did, and then of course anything else. I know that there are a lot of things that we want to talk about and need to talk about, but I want you to get in all of it. Which might be 3 hours. But
you have a week.
Yeah, I know.
Well, I started off with, it was actually a patient of mine that came to me and said, this is this pain I'm having, and people think I'm crazy. They're trying to send me to therapy. They're trying to put me on psych drugs. And she was like, this pain is like this and this, and she was describing my disease to me. And I'm like, oh my God, how did God put this woman in front of me? And she has my disease. And she starts crying because for the first time I said, have you ever heard of, that non-length dependent small fiber? So I explain it to her. I send her to my neurologist in Denver. She gets those skin biopsies. She's positive. She has pictures of these damaged nerves. And she said, because of you, forever, I have documentation that I'm not crazy. I'm like, not going to cry right now, but to have this woman have this in her hands, and to have proof that she's actually in pain when no one believed her for up to 3 years. So she was COVID injured, not vaccine injured, but this started after COVID infection, which upregulated that condition. So I guess she went to Dr. Norman Levin and was helped by him. So she turned around and found me in the community because I had moved practices, and she said, you have to see this guy. And when I walked into his office, because he was also practicing in Dillon, Colorado, just like a week, a month or whatever, and I'm thinking to myself, like, what supplement or herb is going to fix this situation? I'm like, whatever is not going to help. And so I just had no idea what he was going to throw at me, and he said low dose hydrogen peroxide infusion, so that 3% peroxide, to kill infection and to kill any sort of parasites and bacteria and chronic viruses that are hanging out like that COVID.
So what can happen too, especially when something like sends you over the edge, is you already have a burden that is sitting there. So it might not manifest necessarily, right? So whether it's, Epstein-Barr, whatever virus, can sit there, and the parasites and the worms and all the things that in the metals, right? So you can go on, and your bucket is just getting more full, more full, more full. And so whether it's the COVID or the vaccine or whatever, it's like, okay, I'm out. Buckets, overflowing, and here you are,
Yeah.
right?
Meeting the tipping point.
Yeah.
So he said, have you ever been tested for heavy metals? And then he said, do you have an allergy to metals where you put on jewelry and it gives you a rash, or your ears swell up with the earrings? And I think his point is that some people are more sensitive to this. So if you think about those earrings in your ears and you're like, I gotta get them out, what do you do when they like soda stream metal through your whole body, and people are sitting there like, I have fibromyalgia, I have this autoimmune disease, and we're not thinking, I can't wear metal earrings, but I am accumulating metal inside of me, and so that underlying cause, that the environmental aspect of this isn't being tested. We're not thinking about environmental medicine, and as we are moving forward, and we're in 2024, it's not 1990 anymore, our toxin load, the planet itself is reaching that same tipping point as we are. And so I went into his office, he said, let's try toxic metal removal, and he chelated me a couple times, and the first time he did it, my entire body went numb. I actually lost full sensory and was with my mom, and thank goodness my mom took care of me. And I was terrified, and people are like, how did you do that again? And I was like, well, it did something, and when you're so desperate.
Something, right? Okay,
Yeah.
Maybe that's forward movement, yeah.
Yeah, when you're in a position where, like, how could things get worse? Like, even when something affects you that way, you're like, all right, let's do it again. That was crazy. So I did it a bunch of times, and until the point, so every single time he did it, it was less and less of that, interesting sensation, and until the last time was just some like popping in my palms and my arms and legs. But for the most part, the dramatic response was decreasing and decreasing, and that began like only a couple hours after the first infusion. And so he said, okay, when you're due for IVIG again, instead of doing it, 5 days from now or 10 days from now, I want you to come to me instead, and we're gonna try something else. And if you have to, you do the IVIG. And I just never needed it ever again.
Wow.
I just went day 17, day 20, day 22. My husband's like, oh my God, like, did this really do this to you?
Wow.
So, and he put me on ivermectin, and he put me on hydroxychloroquine, and all the things that were banned during COVID, and that are considered crazy. And I think all of these things in combination really made a huge difference as far as turning my immune system off. And the IVIG, it was like halfway through, it was like a year in, and I read that each bottle can be up to 100,000 donors in that bottle. Yeah. And I was like, okay, I'm sitting in my house putting 100,000 into me, and how much spike protein is in there? How many? Because
they don't check for that.
How many of them are vaccinated people? Was I making myself better and worse at the same time? So
that's such an interesting point, because we have these, which is a really interesting therapy and has helped a lot of people. But when we're not checking for something like this, particularly the spike proteins, particularly the vaccine, right? If that's running around in somebody's system and they're donating for this, this treatment, what is that doing? And is it perpetuating?
Right, and but certainly I'm not, trying to speak out about, against IVIG. It's helping a lot of people, but again, to emergently help a situation that has more of an underlying cause, not just relieving of those symptoms. And so if you're using IVIG in that moment, you need that, but seeking some sort of alternative therapy like I did certainly is a better option. And I think some of the vaccine injured, which we can talk about, like the groups and support groups I was in, is that the spike protein is too small to filter. So whatever filters they use, they actually looked at the size of spike proteins, and what they filter the IVIG through is those are too small. So it's worrisome, for sure.
For sure. So let's do that. Let's talk about the groups and the VAERS and all of the fun things.
Yeah, so, I was like, you know what, I think the therapies, the ozone therapy was important to me too.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, we can talk about that after, just meeting Ben and the next steps in my healing, but
well, we can talk whatever order works best for you.
No, I think that the groups is important too, and the things I tried to do to actually make this right. So I put my case through to VAERS, which is the vaccine injury group that you can submit your injury to, and they collected my data, and I believe there's a website where you can, I think it's like looking up your batch, and you can look up how many people were injured in each of the batches that were put out, which is thousands.
That reported it.
Yeah, that reported it. And there were millions. They couldn't even keep up with how many injuries were being reported. And, you know, no, I didn't see this occur in the medical field with tetanus vaccine or with flu vaccine. No one were like, you know, to this extent, you know. So I reported it to VAERS, and then I put it through to CICP, which is the Countermeasures Injury Compensation Program, and I fought and fought. I've called them time after time, and they kept telling me it was in process, or I didn't send in X, Y, and Z paperwork correctly, and in the end they said they would get back to me, and I stopped calling them a year and a half ago. And, you know, I don't know who ever received money from them to compensate them for the hundreds of thousands of dollars that this cost us. And, you know, I'm like, is this a real group? Did they ever help anyone, or were they just trying to collect data on us? You know, so so the support groups that I was in on Facebook, I think this brings up a really, you know, what sounds controversial but just is true, is that we were in these groups, and each group was 10-15,000 people from across the world, and I was communicating with people vaccine injured in Europe and in, you know, Asia, and people were communicating to me in different languages, and we were translating it, and it was really sad and really concerning, but I had that support that everyone else was, you know, suffering as well. But, you know, we couldn't say vaccine injury, and when we joined the group, we had to agree that we weren't going to use certain terms
because
that would trigger.
They would censor you. They would shut you down.
So we would have to say VM2 meant vaccine Moderna #1, that you received that first vaccine, or P2 was Pfizer second vaccine. And I belonged to 5 or 6 groups, and I stopped going on for about a year. Once I got better, I was like, I need a break from kind of hearing all that. And I've gone on now, and only one of those groups still exists. So I doubt that 10,000 people just decided that they didn't need that support anymore. These groups were literally shut down. So they were finding these groups and intentionally separating us. So that we couldn't communicate what had happened, that we couldn't band together, even though we weren't like, there are some of us who've created huge movements out of this, but just generally separating people, everyday people that were trying to support each other, because that topic was not allowed.
Right, well, I mean, that's what they did at COVID, with COVID periods. They separated everybody. I mean, it's a horrible, disgusting thing that happened.
And I think my like favorite saying, or my most frequent saying right now is, well, it sounds like a conspiracy, but what it really is just true. You know, and I realize these things throughout the last couple of years, that everything that they're trying to suppress, and that these things are true, you know, and unfortunately some intentional and some unintentional, but hard to tell the difference at this point.
It is.
Yeah.
So, what about, so you said a few minutes ago you were talking about people who have started a movement.
Yeah, so one of the girls in our group, Bree Dressen, she and I have communicated throughout this. She was one of the first vaccine injured because she was in the AstraZeneca trial. And there's a video of Senator Johnson who was trying to create a movement and saying, I'm a senator and I've recognized that this problem exists. And of course he got in huge trouble, and you know, but I watched this gathering with, you know, she's a mom of 3, and the girl across from her is a dental hygienist, and you know, we're not talking about psychiatric patients or something like people, you know, not in their right mind saying these things, you know, regular people saying these things. And I watched her lay on a bench because she was just too ill to even participate in this. And she has gone against the government at this point and made them start talking about this and acknowledging this. And she put together or participated in, there was a couple thousand people that did a march. I believe it was November 2022, I could be wrong, but I think that was around that time, and it never made the news. It was never on social media, and I'm like, how can a march happen in Washington with thousands of people and it doesn't come on any television show and gets like scrubbed immediately, you know? And we've just watched her grow, you know, throughout all of this, and she's just been such a powerful force as far as being able to take the actions that some of us haven't been able to. Either we're too sick or just kind of not the personality or whatever, you know. She was just she's still this driving force, and she just wrote this book called Worth a Shot, and I'm so incredibly proud of her. And you know,
you give me chills.
But she told her story, and you know, I think it's probably coming that time in my life, given that I turned tragedy into a career, you know, that I certainly am gonna look for someone to write my book at some point.
Yeah, I know people who could help.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot of us injured that have an incredible story.
Well, and the thing that I keep thinking about too is those who did not make it through.
Absolutely. So a lot of people, you know, died from this and died immediately, either from COVID or the vaccine. And, you know, we had people in our group who committed suicide. We had people and not because of mental illness, from pain and suffering. And, you know, we mourned a couple members of our group that chose euthanasia over being, you know, those that weren't as lucky as me, you know, sitting there on 7 drugs, calling myself lucky, but, you know, actually having those medications to respond to them, where these people were like, it hurts to take a shower. You know, I can't drive a car because the steering wheel vibrating in my hands hurts, you know. And some of these people just didn't have the love and support like I did from my whole family and my friends. I mean, a lot of these people found themselves isolated, and you know, I have people's names in my cell phone still who chose that they couldn't be alive anymore. I talked to one of them a week before he chose euthanasia, and yeah. It's been a lot.
Yeah, and I think that those are the things that are less, we think about less, are those who are injured who can't, or decide they can't make it through. You know, there also are those, and this just is because this is personal to me, those who had the random cancers that pop up and take them out, you know, 6 months after they're vaccinated.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to sound so, I don't know what the word is, just you know, not to be negative, but, you know, if this was intentional, you know, if this was meant to harm people, you know, so many people talk about overpopulation, or, you know, I can never prove that this wasn't intentional, but, you know, it's very tiered, you know, they can't just kill, you know, hundreds of thousands of us at the same time, but I feel like some of us were hurt in an hour, some were hurt in 12 hours, some were hurt in 12 weeks, some in 12 months, and some might be hurt in 12 years, you know, so this word upregulation of underlying conditions, you know, I have a friend right now, Rob, who has a chronic leukemia, and he's was in his 40s when this happened, and that's an old person's disease. It's for people in their 70s. So did he get this disease after being vaccinated? And I certainly have helped him realize that, but you know, did he get this disease 30 years earlier than he should have?
Yeah, it's a horrible thing, and I think that it's a hard one to grasp. But when you, I mean, for one, the data's there, right? The uptick in cancer is significant. I wish I had numbers. I did not take the time to bring numbers. I should have. But, you know, I think that we can look in our own families. You know, we had 3 or 4 who were vaccinated, and within 6-8 months were gone. And then I have friends, you know, the same thing. And then you have those who were injured. I mean, it's just extends so far beyond. It's just madness.
It is madness, and it's like so dispersed, and then you take dispersed and you have interject intentional separation between us, and you're like, okay, this problem doesn't exist. And I'm not the only person who's a healthcare provider. There are doctors out there, hundreds of thousands of them, that would sit here and say the same thing. So this isn't, you know, me individually feeling this way. Doctors, lawyers, you know, some of surgeons, some of the most successful people, pillars of their community, sitting around going, something's not right here. You know, so I think that the heart inflammation that we've seen, the increase in miscarriages, the, you know, dead baby type of stuff, and, you know,
the sudden deaths,
which there's actually a movie called Died Suddenly.
I've seen it. It's crazy.
Terrifying.
Crazy.
Terrifying after what I've been through to say terrifying.
Yeah.
You know, and there's multiple movies. They made a movie about vaccine injuries, which I can't think of the name of off the top of my head, but in Minnesota, they got together 20 or 30 injured patients and did interviews like me and put this together, and you couldn't find it if you tried. It's certainly not on Amazon or anything. And I spoke to a man in New York City who wrote a book on vaccine injury, and he got banned from Amazon. You could not buy his book on Amazon after a month of it being on there. So
just so sad, so hard. It's amazing. I don't even know any other word for it.
You don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but as you talk to all these people and you're like, okay, you can't find the movie. Okay, they did shut this group down. Okay, you're right, his book is not on Amazon anymore. You know, it becomes difficult to deny that there's an intentional separation of us.
Agreed. So let's do this. Let's talk. It's 11 o'clock. Man, we could do another 2 hours of this. But let's hit real quick on, if you have the time, on the other therapies that you did and what you're doing now.
So the man who I met first, Dr. Norman Levin, he hasn't fully retired, but just kind of backing off, and you know, decided to close his practice in Dillon. And essentially, I said, I feel like I should take this over, and he said that would be wonderful. And so I took over a lot of his patients and right now, when I sit in my office, I am sitting in his chair, and I sat across from him in the chairs where my patients are sitting, literally. So it means a lot, and I turned this into a career. And so I got into a year worth of just doing a chelation clinic that was focusing on testing for toxic metals in Dillon, Colorado. And so I did that for a year, and then I wanted to get chelation certified. So this past May 2024, I went down to that ACAM conference, which is just all the functional and integrated providers coming together and sharing the latest data. And I met this woman, Suzanne Foray, and she's written some books on peptides and all that kind of stuff. And so I met her at the coffee station, and I said, I really liked your lecture, and she asked me where I was from, and when I said Colorado, she's like, oh my gosh, you have to meet Dr. Ben Bush, he's like right by you. So I was introduced to him down there. I kind of briefly told him my story, and he said, when we get back to Colorado, we should hang out, come see my practice. So I did that, and essentially he said, like, I'm going to enhance your business and I'm going to heal your nerves. So, he definitely has helped me in more than one way. So what I did down with him is I started to do ozone therapy, which is taking, we use a machine to take O2 and turn it into O3. So that extra molecule on there becomes unstable to that O2. And so we add it to the blood, kind of like a blood transfusion, and we add it to that, and that molecule breaks off, and the blood turns like neon red instead
super
of
oxygenated.
Super oxygenated, and then we re-infuse that into the patient, and we re-infuse it through a machine that is exposing it to UVA, UVC, and some different other colored spectrum lights that are killing bacteria, killing viruses, so super oxygenation as well as anti-infective. So reinfusing that into me, I began to have pain flares. So again in my life, I was like, all right, this is doing something. So even though I'm in more pain, let me just keep doing this, because they did tell me nerves healing can be painful as well. Nerves doing anything can be painful. So I took this as possibly a sense of healing, and I did 5 or 6 of these, and I had been on Lyrica, which is a pain medicine for nerves, similar to like gabapentin or Neurontin is the other name for it. There you go. And so I was on 225 twice a day, and that's maximum dosing that even the pharmacists are like, are you sure you're on this? And I was able to titrate down to 75 twice a day is what I'm currently on. I haven't been able to come off, but I am down 2/3 of my dosing after ozone therapy, and I felt like it went in and gave these nerves the oxygen they needed to heal. They told me if my nerves were going to heal, it'd be 10, 20 years, and he made that into 10, 20 weeks. So I did those treatments as well as some glutathione, which is one of the master antioxidants, and high dose vitamin C, and a medication called phosphatidylcholine, which is also known as Plaque-X. And all of these things were stimulating my immune system to fight against whatever was left in my system, and the hyperoxygenation from the ozone definitely healed my nerves. And I sit there now, I'm part of ViveWell, so I said, Ben, I think we should turn my clinic into ViveWell number 2, which we have. Him and I both looking back to May, not even a year ago, and going, what did we just do? This is so awesome, but now I've made my job into helping to heal people, and whether it's, fibromyalgia or, psoriasis, Ben had a guy with psoriasis that was not responsive to anything, and ozone, and it's like gone, you know, and we can never promise these results, but you know, a lot of people have mild to moderate results, and we have people that are like fully healed from this, you know, so it's been an amazing journey for sure. We do things like inhaled hydrogen. Hydrogen's the smallest molecule that there is, and so therefore it easily passes into lung tissue and other tissues, all tissues in the body. So we put it on like it's a nasal cannula, like oxygen, and we give that, and it's helping, you know, not only lung disease but even more systemic disease, helping to reverse a lot of this oxidative stress. And our bodies are accumulating these oxidative stressors to the point where we aren't able to get rid of it, you know, easily on our own. So these type of therapies are helping to facilitate the body to get rid of toxins as well as these harmful kind of leftovers of our energy production. So yeah, it's been amazing to help people in this way, and I won't forget how kind of Dr. Levin looked at me and just changed the way I thought about autoimmune in general, and was like, you know, autoimmune itself is the term related to like the immune system attacking itself, and, you know, or attacking the body itself. And, you know, what if autoimmune is that the immune system is not malfunctioning? You know, the immune system can only function one way, and it only knows how to do its job. So the Western medicine is looking at autoimmune as the immune system malfunctioning, but what if the immune system is doing its job correctly, but it is attacking inward because we are taking in microplastics and the jet fuel and the toxic metals. So, you know, what if the immune system in autoimmune is doing its job, but it's trying to kill things that are in you?
I say that so often because it's so true. You know, when I'm talking with clients or patients or anybody really, when we talk about dysfunction, you know, dysfunction is understandable, but I really try to get away from the term dysfunction, because I fully believe that God's a pretty smart dude and he created our bodies so beautifully and so perfectly, and it knows that its job is to keep us alive. It knows exactly what it's supposed to do, and it has to fight around all of the things that we do to it and the things that are coming into it. And so I fully agree that there's more to it than just the body's like, it's not working right? It's dysfunctional, it's malfunctioning, it's not doing what it's supposed to be doing, it's confused. I don't think so.
No.
I think it's pretty smart. It knows exactly what it's doing. We then, though, because a lot of times, you know, we come into these situations, talk about, gut dysfunction, right? I'm sure that your situation was like this immediate leaky gut thing. So you've got gut dysfunction, and then you have micronutrient deficiencies. So, you know, we have to then support it at the baseline. So yes, getting rid of all the toxins and the metals and the viruses and the radiation and all of these things that are in our water and everywhere else. But at the same time, supporting it, right? Giving it back what it needs, taking the drugs that you're taking. This is for anybody to keep in mind. And I see this so often is with the amount of drugs that people are on, a lot of them necessary like yours, and sometimes they're not necessarily, but still they impact detoxification pathways. They use up our Bs, and so we're deficient. And so then we're not detoxifying properly, and then we don't feel good, and then we don't have any energy, and it goes on and on and on and on. And then what do? You take more drugs because you're taking the drugs. And really, if we start to unwind some of this stuff, let's go super basic for a little bit. Let's look at the nutrition that you need. Let's look at the nutrients to help counteract, what is being lost through the drugs that have to be taken, and then kind of go from there. But deficiency is a huge problem.
Absolutely. And people will say to me, I eat right, and I eat healthy, and I exercise, and you know, I still don't feel well, and so many people are sitting in front of me and they're like 30, you know, they're 10 years younger than me, and I'm like, how are you critically ill? And you know, I think that no matter how good we're eating, sometimes we are needing to supplement. People are like, well, I don't, you know, we do believe that food is the best medicine, but you know, when it comes to supplementation of some of these antioxidants and some of these vitamins, is people aren't thinking that we have such a population to feed, that we're not rotating crops anymore. There isn't a field that's not being used that for a season is allowed, the soil's allowed to regenerate itself and, you know, remineralize itself. And so we're growing all these crops in soil that is tired, you know, and so our vegetables aren't as red and as green, and you know, we kind of taste the difference, and it's such a slow change that we don't realize it. But not to say that everyone needs supplementation, but eating organic and, you know, minimizing the pesticides on things, knowing what the, you know, what the things you can need to wash off more, the things that you can eat, you know, non-organic versus needing to eat organic. There's a lot of education pieces that are missing that certainly need to be addressed. And, you know, I feel strongly that, you know, some of the supplements that I'm taking, you know, are important because I'm not getting those nutrients, and people will, you know, say, well, I don't really want to take supplements. I'm like, well, you're sitting in front of me and you don't feel well, and you eat amazing. So, you know, sometimes those things are needed, or at least just to fill up the bucket until we can make things better. And it's just, I think going into essentially environmental medicine right now has changed the way I think about the environment I'm living in, and the world is not going to get any cleaner. You know, I think that, you know, there's just a continuous increase and escalation in this that we're gonna need to, with how many more people are getting sick from these things or mysterious illnesses, that we're going to need to start looking at environmental medicine and starting to treat the body, starting from the gut, and moving on from there too, and cleansing the blood, and all these chronic viruses that don't respond to anything. They're like, you have Lyme disease, you have chronic EBV from mono, like, and the Western medicine traditional response is, okay, well, we've done everything we can, so sorry, you're going to be tired forever. You know, and that's but there's no education out there, just kind of what else can I do, and the answer isn't nothing. You know, agreed. The answer is it's stuff that we're doing that just isn't well known enough, and hopefully with stuff like this and just us speaking out over and over and over again, that it will be known. You know, I think that maybe there's a tipping point where people realize what we're doing is some of the good stuff.
A lot of the good stuff.
A lot of the good stuff. And what you're doing. What you're doing is amazing.
Thank you.
We're lucky to have you part of the team.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's an exciting place to be. It's a hard place to be, as you well know, you know, when it comes to where we are in this health space. But to be in that place where we're seeing this trajectory to, at minimum, to bringing together functional and traditional medicine, right, and working together, and people saying, okay, there's something more that needs to be done here. It's a really amazing place to be, and you watch. You know, I would go to. Well, we're running so long. I would go to, you know, these do modules through Institute for Functional Medicine, right, where you have a lot of the conventional medical doctors coming in to learn about functional medicine, and their minds are exploding. Literally, I would talk to these girls and guys, and their minds are exploding about, you know, I had no idea that this was a thing. I had no idea that that food made such a difference. I had no idea about toxic load. I had no idea about detoxification. You know, there are those who believe that the liver just detoxes, and that's what it does, and we don't have to do detoxing, which we should detox daily. But opening up to again, it's this foundation of medicine. It's this foundation of health. It's root cause medicine. This is the stuff that makes the biggest difference.
It's like the mitochondria.
Yeah.
You know, those are the lungs
Talk about
of
the
our
foundation.
cells.
Yeah.
Our DNA is being damaged. Our mitochondria of our cells that makes our energy is being damaged just by solar radiation alone. You know, so pick a thing and put them all together, and you've got, you know, illness. And some of my most recent patients were actually referred to me by my previous practice, and so I actually see traditional Western medicine providers hearing me and realizing that, you know, okay, if I can't do anything for this chronically ill patient, maybe Tara can. You know, so we're going to be doing some lunch and learns around the local community in Summit County, and you know, getting the word out about some of this stuff.
Yeah, awesome. All right, we should wrap it up. Anything else you want to say?
A 1,000 things.
Yeah,
so,
I will.
So,
okay, next week.
Thank you. Of course. Yeah.
All right, awesome. Well, I knew that this was going to be really good. I'm really glad that that you were able to do it with me this week on such short notice. But if you have questions, if you have thoughts, obviously you can reach out to me. Tara is, you use Tara at ViveWell.health?
T. Taylor at ViveWell.health. And then just our website is ViveWell.health, and we do things to make people who are well even better. You know, taking people and anti-aging and making people's cells younger and healthier. So you don't have to be chronically ill. You can just want to be even better than you are. But you know, we know how to make people actually better where we're at.
Yeah,
it's cool.
Yeah, it's amazing the therapies that they have. It's truly fascinating stuff, and it's a blessing to know and to be a part of this group of people. And the Christmas party was super fun.
Yeah, this being the outcome of a Christmas party is pretty awesome.
Yeah. All right, so of course you know where to find me, Taste Life Nutrition, everywhere, all the socials, the website, the thing. You can go to my website and fill out an assessment online where I can reach out to you, we'll chat a little bit, and we'll see if I can help, or if I know somebody who can, because probably I do. So anyway, go to ViveWell.health, go to tastelifenutrition.com. Ask a lot of questions. Don't just take things for granted. Don't take things at surface level. We have to ask questions. We have to question everything. We really do. There's a T-shirt that says "Question Everything" that we purchased for some friends. I gotta wrap it up. No, we don't. Oh, we're getting our picture taken. Anyway, so we're gonna do this again. I think this is an important topic. I hope that it is not censored, so we'll see what happens with that. But for those of you who are watching live, I'm glad you did, and we will do it again because we need to talk about this, and it needs to be talked about more because people need to come together and support each other. So I'm going to stop there. Everybody have a beautiful, wonderful Merry Christmas. What a gift this time of year is, well, and every time of year, but true blessings to everyone out there. God bless you. Say your prayers and safe travels if you're traveling. And I guess that's probably it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Yeah. All right. See y'all.